Welcome to the Are We Nearly There Yet podcast. I'm Sonia, wife and mum to 4 children who range in age from 7 to 12. I'm also the families lead at Kerith Community Church. In each episode, I'm going to have a conversation with someone relating to this journey we're on in parenting and family life. If you're looking for expert parenting advice, well, you've come to the wrong place. I do hope, though, that this will be a place to share, to find affirmation, a place that may challenge our thinking, open our eyes to other people's situations, and ultimately help us realise we're not alone in this journey of parenting. Perhaps you're just starting out, or perhaps your children are nearly adults. Or whatever your situation, you are all welcome to join us in this conversation. This week I chatted to Suzanne, mum of 3 children who are actually now teens and young adults. She has walked through a very specific experience in her parenting journey of one of her children's mental health issues. Come and listen into that conversation. So this week I'm really pleased to have Suzanne with me. Suzanne, welcome to the Are We Nearly There Yet podcast.
Thank you, Sonia. Thank you for having me.
It's so great to have you with us. Why don't you tell everyone listening who you are, who your family is, and by that I mean your family when you were growing up and your family now.
Okay, so as Sonia's already said, my name's Suzanne. I'm married to Jeff now. Growing up, I was living with a family growing up in Hazelmere in Surrey, and I have an older sister. She's not much older than me. She's 18 months older than me, more or less. So we were very close growing up, and I'm still very close to her now. So we now live in Wokingham, and we have 3 children of our own, and they are 20, 18 and 15, which always kind of shocks me when I say that out loud, because I can't believe I'm old enough to have children that age, to be honest, Sonia.
Well, obviously being a podcast, no one can see you, but you definitely don't look old enough.
Well, I like to think that, but, you know. Yeah, it feels very strange having adult children now.
Yeah, I expect it does.
So we also have 2 dogs, and they are a huge part of our family and have really enhanced our family life massively. So I'm a big dog convert because I'm really actually not an animal lover. So oddly, I was persuaded to get a dog, and then we ended up getting 2, and yeah, we've really not looked back since.
How old were your kids when you got the dogs?
My youngest was 5. He'd recently started school. It's that old cliche, you know?
Yeah.
The children have gone to school and then it's time to get a dog.
Yeah, mum gets a puppy. Kind of.
Yeah, but they've been like this for years and years, and we finally gave in. So yeah, I don't know if we run a business. So my husband runs a business locally to us, and I am the comms and marketing manager of that. So I'm quite involved there, and yeah, I do lots of other bits and pieces. I like writing, so I've got my own blog, and yeah, I've been doing that for 10 years. Yeah,
you were quite a blogger in the parenting field, weren't you? Am I right in that?
Yeah. When I first started blogging, I had a blog called 3 Children in It, and I started it, I think, when my eldest was about 10 or 11.
Okay.
So and yeah, it was kind of just a bit of fun, jokey, kind of honest family life, and yeah, I really enjoyed writing that. It's just I found it quite hard as they got older. They did used to read it, but I was very mindful as they got into the teenage years of not wanting to expose them, but equally, how do I get that balance right of not wanting to do that and keeping that sort of realness and honesty about it. I found it hard we reached a point in our family life that became very difficult, and I blogged a little bit about that, and then I just found that very hard and completely stopped it altogether. So I wasn't sure how to get the balance right. And then it was just something I enjoyed so much that I had a little break for about 1.5 years, and then I started up a new blog that is just far more my kind of musings and just ramblings. And
so what's it called now, if anyone wants to go and see
it's called Inside, Outside and Beyond.
Inside, Outside and Beyond.
Yeah.
Well, maybe people want to go and check out.
Well, you never know. I like that kind of thing.
I'm sure they will. So having a teenager, well, 2 teenagers, but one of them is officially an adult, and an adult.
2 of them are now.
2 are adults and 1 teenager.
Yeah.
You know, I expect life's a bit different when you're parenting that age. My eldest is 12. Mine range from 7 to 12, so I'm kind of on the younger end of it still. I'd imagine life's a bit different when they hit the teenage years and then adulthood.
Yeah, I have to say the bit that you're in now was my favourite. That kind of 7 to 12 age.
Yeah.
You know, obviously there are challenges. I'm sure you have massive challenges having 4 of them. But yeah, I just really enjoyed that stage. I think having toddlers, I mean, certainly during this pandemic, I cannot imagine how people are parenting toddlers right now. I found it was fun, but it was just so exhausting having toddlers. And I've never forgotten that sort of that feeling of trying to find space and time for yourself and time for you as a couple, and just how hard that is when they're young and so demanding. And right now, not being able to get out and gather with friends and things like that, I just can't imagine how people are coping with that. We obviously have different struggles being at the other end of the spectrum, and our sort of downtime is, well, mine particularly is now in the morning, because my kids do not surface until midday, Sonia.
Wow.
And yeah,
I can't imagine that.
It's madness, isn't it? But I now have the mornings where I'm just kind of pottering around, walking the dogs, doing my own thing, listening to my own music, spending time with God, just really, I use that time for myself, which when you've got young kids, you very much use the evenings, don't you, as your time as a couple, and just to relax and unwind. And we don't have that.
We're now into that zone of, our eldest is now staying up till maybe 9:30, 9:45, 10. So we're kind of losing some of that evening now, but we're not quite fully there in the thick of it yet. We're still...
Hold it off for as long as possible, would be my advice.
Well, apparently he goes to bed...
Sorry?
Apparently he goes to bed far earlier than anyone else.
I'm sure. You're always told that.
As they all do.
No one else's parents make them do that, all of that. Yeah. The major difference, I think, for me with one and the other is when my kids were younger, and maybe I'm looking back with rose-tinted spectacles, who knows, but I did feel as though I was sort of in control.
Yeah.
I felt like I knew what I was doing.
Yeah.
I felt like I had more control over them, which I probably did, rightly or wrongly. I felt like we kind of had things going okay. I still am, but I was a very organised person, very kind of intentional, and things were really quite on an even keel. I mean, we obviously had our moments of mayhem with 3 children under 5, but generally I felt like I knew what I was doing, and that sort of stage of life came quite naturally to me, I would say. And when they hit the teenagers, it all changed, shall we say.
Well, in a moment we'll go into that a little bit more, but I certainly find certain people have different ages that they find easier or harder. What's going on, there's can be other influences and other factors involved as well, but some people find the newborn stage really hard, others don't, or the toddlers, and there's different stages for different people, isn't there?
I mean, toddlers are challenging, obviously, but I like newborn babies. I love newborn babies, so I just took to that really well. I think that's part of the reason why we had a third one. I like a challenge, and I just found that 2 was really comfortable, and I know, let's throw a third one into the mix. So that was fun and games. But I do that. It is very different, and there are definitely different challenges. And I think teenagers are sent to kind of knock that little bit of pride you might have, knock that one to one side. And that's certainly happened for me, I think.
And you've had slightly different experiences to other people with teens as well, haven't you? You mentioned earlier about when you were writing your blog and some stuff happened in your family which made you pause that for a while. Do you want to tell us a little bit about that?
So when my eldest was around 14, and bearing in mind she was our first teenager, she became quite unwell, so I wasn't immediately aware, I have to say. I noticed that she'd changed quite a lot, but when you have teenagers, you said, well, they change. They do spend more time in their bedrooms, they do spend more time with friends, they do kind of go a little bit insular. So I didn't notice immediately how unwell she had become. but she became very anxious, and she developed anorexia, and things just kind of took quite a downward turn for her. It took quite a long time. That's probably over the space of about a year. And at the time, self-harm was a coping mechanism that she used to, I suppose, help her with anxiety. And it's not a healthy coping mechanism, obviously, and it's something that got a real grip on her quite quickly. And I know that isn't everyone's experience. You know, self-harm can be something that sometimes teenagers just experiment with a little bit, and whilst it's not healthy for anybody really, it doesn't always become an addiction, but for her it did. And it took a while for that to get a real hold on her. But sort of over the course of a year, she slowly got worse, and just before her 16th birthday, she ended up going into an adolescent psychiatric unit. So that's kind of where things started. And she still struggles with that now, and we've had some big ups and downs along the way. She had a period of time where she was quite stable and came home, had some good help, got quite a lot of help from CAMS, which is the Child and Adolescent Mental Health Service. Mm-hmm. And she just generally struggles with her mental health. So I think it can creep back in. And it did creep back in about a year and a half ago. So she's currently in another psychiatric unit. This time it's a specialist unit for people that particularly struggle with self-harm. So she's getting some good help, but she's been away a lot during her teen years. So our family life has been disrupted somewhat.
So at 14 that started?
Yeah, I would say she started, she might even say earlier than that, because obviously what's going on in your head isn't necessarily what everybody else sees from the outside. So she might even say 13, but I noticed when she was 14, and it was sort of eating behaviours, and just she'd gone very insular. Her hobbies that she had, she's a very talented girl and had a lot of hobbies, and just those started the classic signs really. She started losing interest in things that had always held her interest before. So so it's hard. She's not a talker, so it was quite hard to parent that and to know how to try and help her. You do very much feel, well, I certainly felt very helpless in all of it. Just not knowing how to help her.
Yeah. How was that for you? Like that feeling of, because you talked earlier about when they're younger, you have more of an element of control. You can control where they are, you can protect them, whether it's like protecting your home when a toddler starts to be on the move from danger, or whether it's like play date, inviting friends around for play dates. They get older and then they have a bit more independence, and you have to let them go a bit more. Yeah,
they start hiding things from you. I think as a toddler and younger children, I think they're much more open and they're much more demonstrative. You can tell from their behaviour quite quickly as to what's going on, and they're much more sort of open to wanting you to help them. I think with teenagers, they have this thing of they're quite independent, and they want to help themselves, and they want to work out how to do it themselves, and that's natural.
Yes, and it's rightly so, isn't it?
Yeah, and I think it's a really important part of growing up is to step away from your parents and to learn to be independent. Yes. The problems come when the difficulties you're facing are detrimental to you and unhealthy, and you actually need help. And that, I think, that's when it became a problem for her. And I think that feeling of just not, I was a massive one for parenting books when my kids were younger. I literally have shelves and shelves full of parenting books, which, there's something for every situation. Somebody's written something on absolutely everything. Now, there aren't many people that have written books or anything around mental illness in teenagers or children. It seems to be a subject that is very taboo, and has a lot of kind of shame and stigma around it. So you do feel incredibly isolated. And I've spoken to other people who've been through something similar, who said the same. It's a very lonely path to walk because people don't talk about it.
Yeah.
And there isn't much information out there to help. And it's not something I've experienced before. It's not something that I struggle with. So therefore, it is hard to understand.
Yeah.
So yeah, the feeling of not being able to fix it for your child is a hard one, because I think when they're younger, you just instinctively feel like you know what to do. Or I certainly felt like that. Whereas on this, I literally had nothing to go on.
When they're hurting, whether it's emotionally when they're younger, or fall over and graze their knee, mummy or daddy are the person to comfort them. In this situation, I would imagine, she needed more. She needed more than that. And that must have been a hard journey for you to walk as her parent, to realise you couldn't be her fix it. It couldn't be just you that would make her better.
Yeah, I think because when you have children, you are pretty much their everything, aren't you?
Yeah.
And you that's the role you've taken on. And so when something like that comes along, it's not what you expect. I mean, we all have expectations of what we think parenting is going to be like, don't we?
Yeah.
What we think are, whether we are aware of those expectations or not, I think we do have an expectation of how we think our children will turn out and how we think we will be as parents.
Mm-hmm.
And this was a curveball. It's really the best way of describing it. It's not something you ponder on before it happens. What would I do if? You just don't think it would happen to your child.
So at that point of realising this was more than teenage independence, this was more, this thing had a grip on your daughter, as opposed to it as a phase or something like that. And it's important that we say, isn't it, that your daughter has given you permission to share her story.
We're very open as a family about it, and that really is, we've taken her lead on that.
Yeah.
So she's very open about the struggle that she's been through. She's quite open on social media about it.
Yeah.
And I always make sure that I speak to her before I share anything that might be private to her, in terms of what we talk about. So as you say, I spoke to her before I chatted with you today, just to kind of get her permission and just see how she feels about it. And she's, we're really keen that the stigma of this is somehow one day eradicated.
Yeah.
It doesn't help people staying quiet, but it is something that seems to have a lot of shame, and that makes it difficult for people. So I think, I hope as a family, we're quite keen for us not to be part of that silence.
Yeah, that's so good. And please thank her on my behalf and on our listeners' behalf.
I will.
For that. At that point then, that things shifted, and it was more than like a phase, and you realised that there was something bigger. Like, how did that impact you in your motherhood? Obviously there would have been things you'd have done to help her or try and get help for her, but I'm interested, was it a case of you didn't really take time to think how it was affecting you, because it was like emergency action stations to help her? Was it?
Yeah, I think the automatic kind of instinct is to just do whatever you can to fight for your child.
Yeah.
I think it was hard because we didn't get a lot of support. We had, because she's quite a private person and found it hard to talk, a lot of people didn't believe us how bad it was, or how bad she was. And it wasn't really until she was suicidal that anybody listened. And so I guess I spent my time trying to access help for her, trying to work out what the best kind of help would be, trying to do all I can to try and get her to talk, which was hard. and just be there for her, but whilst also still parenting 2 other children.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about that.
Yeah, I just don't think, I think that's a classic motherhood thing, really, isn't it? You let yourself go because other things take precedence, and that at the time that was really important.
How have your other children been through this?
They've been remarkably good. Good's not the right word, really, but I mean, it's absolutely no doubt it's been hard for them. So our youngest was 10 when this happened, and he's now 15. So, it's 5 years of very up and down, not quite knowing what, whether their sister's going to be here in the morning, or whether we're going to be in A&E, or, it's been really up and down.
I was going to say, were they aware of all of that stuff going on, or
no,
shielded from some of it?
Yeah, we were quite mindful of protecting them from just knowing the detail.
Yeah,
we didn't feel they needed to know the detail of her struggles, and obviously when they asked questions, we answered the questions, and if she wasn't here, then we would explain why she wasn't here. She ended up going away when she was 15, and it was a long way from home. It was 2 hours from home. Wow. So that there was more conversations then obviously had to happen around why she was going. It's hard to explain without mentioning the fact that she was suicidal, because you don't go into a psychiatric unit really unless you don't want to live anymore. You're going in there to be protected really from yourself.
Yeah.
And to get supposedly the best help you can get while you're in there. So there were small conversations around that, but they just seem to take it really well. I mean, it's hard, but we've pulled together, the 4 of us, and we made sure that we all carried on going to visit her when it felt appropriate. There were times when it wasn't, and we just tried to keep the conversation as open as possible. And one tends to ask a lot of questions, and one doesn't ask any.
Okay.
So it's just getting that, reading them, listening to them, responding to them, their needs really. And they're both very different in that, and it's respecting that, I think. Yeah. So they've done, they're 2 perfectly normal, healthy teenagers, and that is a miracle in itself. I mean, I suppose not a miracle, but I guess when you've had a child who's had struggles for a period of time, I was concerned that maybe one of the other 2 might struggle in the same area. But I think I'm just more sensitive and heightened to that maybe than you would be normally. But they both seem very healthy, so yeah.
Is that because you were concerned there could have been some kind of genetic link, or was it because concern of like learnt behaviour, or just concern because you're more heightened because you've been through this experience once, so you're looking out for things?
I think maybe a combination of all of those, but I've just become so much more aware of how big a thing this is, mental health in teenagers. And I did not know until we've been kind of thrust into this world of what a big thing it is, and how it is an epidemic. And so I suppose I'm just so much more aware.
Yeah.
And because I'm aware, I was then looking out for signs all the time. And it's quite hard because teenagers naturally kind of display some of the signs anyway. So it's quite hard to work out what is them just being a teenager and what is them actually being unwell. And when do I need to get help? And that was quite hard. So I suppose I'm just heightened to that and looking out for it all the time. But they seem to have done really well. And they're happy at school, and they've got a lot of friends, and they're involved in sports, and so they seem to have kind of taken it in their stride, and we try to keep family life as normal as possible.
Yeah. What were those signs for you that took it from more than teenage behaviour, or because there's all different gradients, aren't there, within mental ill health. We all have mental health. Some of us will go through dips in our life where our mental health is not doing as well. Some of us won't. Some of us, that'll happen to much more degrees than others. What were the signs for you that took it from more than
I think
teenage behaviours? Or
it's quite a hard question, because I think you have to go with instinct a bit. She changed, and for me she changed more than was just healthy natural changes. She's a very driven, enthusiastic lover of life, and that kind of disappeared over a period of time. And so I think that for me was the first thing that I noticed, and just kind of a decline in interest of sort of going out with friends, and the hobbies that she had. She's very musical, and just stopped playing instruments, and her sort of level of interest at school. I was getting a few phone calls from teachers, because she's very clever as well, just saying that she's my only A-star student, and why is she not performing, and why is she not handing her homework in? And it's just little things like that were very out of character for her.
Sounds almost like would it be right to say like an absence of joy? Like,
yeah, completely, yeah.
The building kind of thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And she just seemed very preoccupied, and which I now see as depression and anxiety, really.
Yeah.
And then with that came the physical side of things. So she just became thinner and thinner and thinner. And I think, that was when I thought, hang on a minute, she really needs help. So it was, first of all, it was those kind of signs, and then the physical signs were my trigger for, I need to go and get her some help. And any kind of help I've tried to access before then, it had been very much batted off with, oh, she's just a normal teenager, and just like, oh. And equally sometimes, teenagers do sometimes experiment with self-harm, but as a parent, you just think, this isn't a healthy way to kind of deal with emotions.
No.
And know that as a parent, those sort of instincts are in you, aren't they? You know that doesn't feel right. So I really had to push and push and push for someone to listen to us.
Yeah. How did you find that advocacy? That was just quite a struggle, wasn't it, from what you've told me before? To actually heard and get the right help? Yeah.
It's been an interesting journey, shall we say. It's not a secret that CAMHS and just the general support for children with mental ill health is not great in this country. I'm not sure it's great in any country, actually. And just the support there isn't brilliant. I think, from what I can see, I think support in schools is getting better.
Yeah.
I think 5 years ago, when we were experiencing this, it wasn't particularly good. And I think schools are more aware now of the need for support for youth. But yeah, it's just been, it has been a real struggle from start to finish, to be honest. And we have had to fight every step of the way to get her the right help. And we feel that's what we can do as a parent. And she might be 20, but you'll always be a parent, I think, and our responsibility is to be an advocate and fight for our children, whatever age they are, I think.
Absolutely. And it's important that we say that your experience, your daughter's experience, is your unique experience, and everybody's experience will be different. We said we wouldn't want people to listen to this and think this is exactly the way it is for me, or it is going to be exactly this way for me and my child. everyone's experience is different, but it's so great that you're shining a light on this.
Yeah, I think it's just really important to, as you say, to recognise that there are different levels of mental health.
Yeah.
I think it's important, so important, to tackle it early. So to really try and get support really early on, because I think if you do, the likelihood of it becoming anything like this is so slim. The experience that we had, we couldn't get help early on. She wasn't provided with the right support, and I think that is one of the problems she had. And like you say, it doesn't have to be like that. I would hope for many others that it wouldn't be like that.
Yeah.
And there is more available now, I think. There's more sort of talk around it. There's more things online that you can access. There's more sort of free support, what's the word? Free therapies and things for youth.
Yeah.
That I actually we didn't know about at all at the time, because you don't. It's not something that you look into unless you have to, unfortunately.
Yeah. And it seems that like early intervention is coming into like the public forum, the understanding that is just key. With lots of
yes.
issue as well. Like in primary schools, I know mine will have lessons. They don't know that they've got lessons, or is it PHSE? They don't know that they've just had a lesson on mental health, but come home and they'll tell me the kind of things they've talked about, feelings and emotions. And I think, that's good that they're starting to do this stuff now more.
Yeah, it's just awareness. So it's just an awareness of yourself, isn't it?
Yeah.
But I think this has definitely taken off in the last few years, I think. I don't remember my kids having that in primary.
No. So I do think the landscape has changed pretty quickly.
Definitely. And people are more prepared. I do say there's stigma around it, but people are more prepared to talk about it, I think. Their own struggles, and just it just helps people to be more in tune with themselves. And if we can do that with children when they're young, I think it's got to be so much more healthy.
Yeah. You mentioned your husband runs business. So how has your marriage been for all this, Suzanne? You don't have to tell me the ins and outs.
No, we're going to
marriage. We're not going into personal details, don't worry. But you guys, obviously, as a unit facing this together, tell me about that. How have you lent on each other? Because I'm sure it would have been easy to not turn your backs on each other, but you had to fight as a team, didn't you, in this?
Yeah.
You had to be united. So tell us about
that. I mean, I'm very grateful. We're very grateful for each other. I think the appreciation we have for each other, we wouldn't have if we hadn't gone through this, if that makes sense.
Okay, yeah.
Because I think I know people that have gone through this as a single parent, and I honestly don't know how they've done it, because it is such a lonely journey. And, it is hard every day. You're not quite sure what you're going to be facing every day, what you're going to be dealing with. And to have somebody else in your corner that understands is key. I mean, obviously there's been, difficult patches, and we've not quite been on the same wavelength, or we've not quite understood each other, or we're a bit on edge for obvious reasons.
Yeah.
And that's, it's been hard at times, but I think ultimately we've worked together as a team.
Yeah, that's good.
And that has been absolutely key, to do it together and to be on the same kind of page. And we have gone through kind of ups and downs. We'll sometimes find that one is feeling a lot stronger and more motivated and kind of able to articulate themselves well, and the other one is struggling. And then we sort of switch over. So we support the one who's struggling, and vice versa, depending on the day.
Yeah. And it is so important in married life, whether you've got children or not, whether your children are facing these kind of issues or other things, financial pressures, there's going to be things that come up in life, aren't there? And it's so important that in your marriage that you do approach everything as we are doing this as a team? Because sometimes when one of you behaves a certain way or reacts a different way to the other, to the different way that we do, it can be kind of like, well, how come they're reacting that way? Well, this is how I'm reacting to this situation. Because actually,
absolutely, yeah,
we're different, and we are a team. We're not against each other in this. There's enough else to be fighting and dealing with. Like, let's approach this.
We did have those conversations a lot.
Yeah,
you know, and I think the conversation is key.
Yeah,
you know, sometimes we didn't understand each other, and you know, we did have those questions like, why are you reacting or behaving like that? I don't get it. But yeah, I think it's just talking and just trying to understand each other and having a respect for each other. We're both really different. We deal with things in very different ways, but I think we have sort of respect for each other, that we are different, and that's okay.
Yeah. And you'd have come out of this stronger, no doubt.
I hope so.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure we have. Yeah, and we do, you know, we didn't talk about this, but we've been part of Kerith for 18 years, a long time. And, you know, it's really, our faith is integral to our family life and to our marriage. And I said, you know, just without that, and without that as the head of our kind of marriage, I'm not sure we would have come out the other side, to be honest, together as a team, because it is hard. But yeah, we lean on God separately and we lean on God together, and that really has kept us together, I think.
Yeah, that's united you. God's been central to everything that you've done.
Yeah.
Everything that you've approached. How's it been then, as particularly through the lens, and we will wrap up in a few moments, but how has it been particularly through the lens of being a Christian mum with this experience? Did that provide more pressure for you, do you feel? I know at Kerith we've had those open conversations about mental health over the last few years, but historically it's not something that's been talked about in church as well as in the secular. Did that add an extra layer to this situation for you? Or
I wouldn't say I felt anything negative about it at all. Like I've never felt that it's something that we had to hide at church, or it's something we couldn't talk about.
Oh, that's really
good.
Good.
You know what our church is like. It's very open.
Very, yeah.
About normal, everyday struggles in life. And I know, you know, you might not class this as normal, but it's a fact of life.
Yeah.
That is important to be talked about. And yeah, I think we both just felt, I mean, we had the odd occasion where, you know, it would have been easier for us to just crawl away and hide. But it has been a real lifeline for us to have somewhere where we could go, where we felt comfortable and people were welcoming and caring and interested and praying for us.
Because praying for you and also praying for healing. It's so good that, as you say, that Kerith, these conversations it's a totally open place to have these conversations and to not have to wear masks to be ourselves. And definitely. Also in that with your daughter, if it had been a physical illness, you would still seek the same medical interventions and professional interventions, but also be praying for healing alongside.
Yeah.
And that's something that we still want to press into, whether it's physical illness, mental illness. I mean, mental illness is physical illness because the brain is part of the body.
Yeah, I know, it's just a strange concept, isn't it? But
yeah,
we still continue to pray for healing for her, and if that healing comes via the unit and the support and the therapies that she's getting now, then that's still God.
Yes, absolutely.
It's still God's provision.
Yeah.
And you know, we prayed very hard to get her into the place where she is now, because a place there is like gold dust. You know, and we had I've got a little WhatsApp group of people that pray for her. Yeah. And we prayed for weeks, well, months actually, that she would get in here. Yeah. And she did. in January. And when it did come about, it came about very quickly and happened very quickly. But
totally
we were very specific about this particular hospital, because I'd read up a lot about it, and I felt it was the right place for her. So we were very specific about this place, and she's there now. So, you know, we're really hopeful that it is God's provision for her.
Yeah, and you've seen answers to prayer along the way, and we continue to pray.
Yeah, hugely. Yeah, I mean,
whether that comes miraculously without intervention, whether that comes through the intervention she's getting, then you still press it.
And you know, she's working really hard.
Yeah,
it's not an easy illness to overcome.
No.
And she's, you know, she's working every day hard, but she's getting there.
She sounds amazing. I've never actually met her myself. No, I haven't, but from all I've heard from talking to you,
you will one day.
She sounds amazing. Yeah, absolutely. So, Suzanne.
Yeah.
Coming to the end of our conversation together, thank you so much for sharing and being vulnerable, and on behalf of your, you know, for your whole family, thank you.
It's been a pleasure. Thank you for
sharing and shedding a light on this area of parenting and family life. And thinking about our podcast being called "Are We Nearly There Yet?" Your children are teens and grown-ups. I'm sure you remember those early years where they would be sat in the car on a journey asking you, "Are we nearly there yet?"
I do. Yeah.
It's because
they still do sometimes, Sonia.
Do they?
Yeah.
Oh no, I thought that was going to stop. So on this journey that they take us on and we're on as parents, when we go on a journey, we take something with us. So when they're little, we pack up a nappy changing bag with spare clothes, nappies, and they're old snacks, etc., etc. When they get older, they just jump in the car and come along for the ride. But there's still things you need to take with you on a journey. Thinking of your parenting journey, Suzanne, what essential items would you want to have taken with you when you started out on this journey as a parent? And as a way of encouraging others, maybe a bit of advice. It could be funny stuff, it could be serious stuff, anything you like.
Oh yeah, I've got a big bag with me. I've got a few things that I would probably take out of my bag. Can I start with those?
Okay, yeah, go for it.
Okay, so the first one's a bit serious. I probably take out my expectations.
Okay.
So I ditched my expectations of who I'm going to be as a parent. I ditched the expectations I might have on what I think my children are going to turn out like. So I'd get rid of those first. I would get rid of all the parenting books that I've got. I'm staring at them right now, adorning my shelves, because I'm not convinced I needed them all. However, I am going to recommend one. Okay, so I'm not going to get rid of them all. I'm going to keep one. And I'm going to recommend this to anyone who has teenagers, because it's the best book I've ever read on parenting teenagers. Actually, it might be the only one, but it's really, really good. And it's called Get Out of My Life, but First Take Me and Alex into Town. And basically that says it all. But it's such a good book. It's funny and it's practical, and it's really helpful for anyone with teenagers. So I take that with me.
Who's it by?
It's by...
I'm guessing there's not more than one title with the same title.
No, quite unusual one. It's by Tony Wolfe and Suzanne Franks. For anyone that would like to get hold of that book. I have a copy as well, so if anyone would like to borrow it from me, then you're welcome to borrow it.
Thank you.
But yeah, I get rid of all the others. And I would take the advice of people who've gone before me. So I, as the years have unfolded, I've always tried to have people in my world who have done it before, if you know what I mean. So I've sought out people who now have more grown-up adults than I've got, just kind of work out how they've done it, to ask advice and to just get support, I guess. So I found that invaluable in all sorts of areas of life, I suppose, both the mental health world, but also just parenting teenagers in general. Finding people who walked the path before, and just having a bit of solidarity and hope and encouragement from others. So that would be something I take with me. I mentioned before I have this little group of prayer warriors, so I would definitely take my prayer warriors with me. just a group of people who are so supportive and that I can lean on when we need answers to prayer, but we can also rejoice and be grateful for answers to prayer together. And that's been such a support for us as a couple and as a family. And we've seen some amazing answers to prayer, and that's just really, just sharing that with others is really precious, and it's been a blessing. So that, and lastly, I would take a sense of humour. Because I'm telling you, when my children reached the teenage years, I became the butt of all the jokes. So I am a great source of amusement for them. And I decided quite early on, I'm either going to have to learn to take this on the chin and kind of take it as a backhanded compliment. Otherwise, I'm going to be permanently feeling like I'm being bullied. And I could take it personally, or I could just join them and laugh at myself. So I would definitely take a sense of humour with me.
Oh, that's brilliant. I love that. Thank you so much for coming and sharing with me.
That's okay. Thank you, Sonia.
What you said about the people a little bit further down the line, for lots of people listening to this, you'll have been that person for them listening to this.
I hope so. And I'd like to be. So yeah, I think that's a good thing to do.
Thank you so much, and pass on my thanks to your family, and I'll catch up with you soon.
Thank you so much.
Thanks, Suzanne.
Bye.
Bye. Well, I just want to say a massive thank you to Suzanne for that conversation that she had with me, and to her whole family, really, for allowing yourselves to be vulnerable, and for Suzanne to shine a light on that area that maybe an area that isn't usually talked about very much. Of course, it's so important that we have an awareness of other people's situations, whether we're journeying through those ourselves or not. Some of us will never face what Suzanne and her family have had to face. Some of us may have a taste of mental health needs in our children, and it's just really important that we are eyes opened, hearts opened, and we're praying for our children, and we're seeking help for our children when they need it. Suzanne's blog is called Inside, Outside and Beyond, and that book she mentioned there, particularly about parenting the teens, Get Out of My Life, But First Take Me and Alex Into Town. That book is by Tony Wolfe and Suzanne Franks. We hope you've enjoyed being with us again this week on Are We Nearly There Yet? We'll see you next time.